utensils, food. It's being stockpiled. The governor has received this information because he has spies. This is the reason why they're coming. But it's not the only reason. This bridge, in 1775, it would not have been arched. It would have been lower to the river. But this bridge, back in 1775, takes you out to a farm, Barrett's Farm. Today, it's about 1.7 miles away, because I've clocked it. 1775, it's probably 2 miles. It's at that farm where there are cannon. Some of the cannon were stolen from the British out of Boston. If you go to the visitor center, the barrel of the Hancock cannon is one of those original cannon. The other cannon, the Adams cannon, named after Samuel Adams, is at the Bunker Hill Museum. So this is the importance of the bridge. To get to the Barrett Farm, they've got to come out this way, they've got to cross the bridge. So Governor Gage, who is also the ranking British general in North America, has received this information, and he is under pressure from the British government to take action regarding what the colonists have been doing. Now, what the British government doesn't know is Gage has lost 4 cannon. Oh, he left that out of the dispatches because he's hoping to get the cannon back before the Prime Minister finds out. The night before the mission, Gage receives information that the cannon are no longer at the farm. They've been moved further west. And he has to decide, do I still carry out the mission or not, because they can still go to Concord? And he decides, I'm going to do that. Here's the problem. It's 20 miles out, then 20 miles back. He's got to use stealth and he's got to use speed. He has neither. Because the Patriots are very well organized. They're watching all British movement. So when they start seeing 700 soldiers being organized in Boston, 30 to 40 dispatch riders, midnight riders, Paul Revere's the most famous, I'll explain why in a second, they now disperse throughout the colony, raising the alarm. The regulars are out. Revere becomes famous because he picks the road in which the regulars are going to go down. That's why everybody remembers Paul Revere. Not taking away anything from Paul Revere. There's been several biographies written on the man, and he certainly is to be credited for his involvement in this time period. But he's not alone. You get other people like William Dawes, who's kind of been forgotten about in history. We'll come back to that in a second. So anyway, the alarm goes out. Revere's riding down the road towards Lexington on his way to Concord. And as he's riding any house near the road, he's stopping, he's knocking on the door, or he's riding by and he's saying, the regulars are out, the regulars are out. So in any of the old movies you've seen where you see a Paul Revere type run down the road on the horse and the British are coming, the British are coming. Never said that. He would never say that. Anybody know why he would never say the British are coming?
They were all British.
They're all British, right. So it was like, it sounds good, but the regulars are out. He gets to Lexington just after midnight, where he meets Dawes. Samuel Adams and John Hancock are hiding out in Lexington. They're thinking, and the word was Smith, if he could capture the likes of Samuel Adams, he was to do so. So Revere and Dawes are now riding towards Concord when they run into Dr. Samuel Prescott, who's from Concord. He's dating a young lady in Lexington. Now, what he was doing out after midnight, that's none of my business. So, if you've been to the other part of the park yet, the Battle Road, you have the Revere capture site, right? You may have seen that. Everybody's seen that. Just put your hands up if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, very good. It's pitch black. This English voice all of a sudden, I'm paraphrasing here, pistol in their faces, and Revere's going to be detained. He's not arrested, he's detained. But Prescott jumps his horse over a wall and escapes, and he gets into Concord. No later than 2 o'clock in the morning. Reverend Emerson, who lives in the Old Manse at the time, the great-grandfather of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who ends up writing the Concord hymn, in which the shot heard around the world, referring to the bridge, to the incident at the bridge. He's highly respected. The townspeople go to him, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Organize. We got to defend ourselves. So the alarm is raised very early on. Now to fast forward. In Lexington, Captain John Parker calls out the militia. They wait, nothing happens. That's it, false alarm, must be, go home. If you hear the drums beating, come back. 4:30 in the morning, drums are beating, militia comes back, 77 men assemble, British are coming in, Major Pitcairn's leading them. He sees the militia on the green, and he sends out some troops. He rides out himself, and he shouts, "Put down your arms, you damn rebels." Parker is not a stupid man. He's only got 77 guys. There's no way that he can take on the likes of 700. So he gives the order, disperse. All right, boys, we made our point. Symbolic gesture's been made. We cannot resist because these are the king's troops. This would be treason. So they've turned. They're leaving the green when a musket goes off. Now, both sides are going to claim the other side fired first. Some people claim that the musket that was fired was not actually fired on the green. It was fired on the periphery. Nonetheless, the British think they're being shot at. Breakdown in discipline. They shoot 8. They wound 10. All hell breaks loose. The officers have a devil of a time getting the men back under their command. But the damage is done. When they march into Concord, the man who's in charge of the Middlesex County militia units, including the Minutemen, I'll explain what the difference is in a second. Colonel Barrett, whose farm where the cannon had been held, he's the overall commander, and he knows that there's little they can do, so they end up withdrawing over the bridge, and they go down to Punkatasset Hill, about half a mile away. Smith's force comes into the town. Now, in the square, you may have noticed the cemetery on the hill beside St. Bernard's Catholic Church. Imagine this, 1775. There's not as many trees. They could see the bridge with the assistance of a spyglass. We know Smith and Pitcairn go to the top. They see the bridge, and he realizes he has his instructions. We're going to send troops down to take the bridge and then send them on out to the farm. That's the plan. So they start doing this by 8 o'clock in the morning. 200 British troops come down here. They're going to leave about 96 here. 120 go across, and they walk out to the farm where they're not going to find anything. Meanwhile, in the town, the remaining British soldiers are under implicit instructions. They are not to destroy private property. They are to pick up any contraband and destroy it. Here's the problem. Those soldiers have been marching for 20 miles. They're hungry, they're wet, they're tired, they're irritable, and they don't do a really good job searching. Now, how do we know this? People in Concord did an excellent job concealing. There's a lot of stuff in Concord which was just well concealed in basements and in attics. So what little they do find, like they found 2 or 3 gun carriages. They found 500 wooden spoons. They found 500 musket balls, which they dumped in the mill pond, which has since been filled in. The next day, those musket balls were retrieved. So they started making fires. One of the fires was close to a building. They were kind of careless. So they've set fire, and it was just like now, that wind shift, sparks from the fire jumped onto a building, and it caught a light. While that happens, Punkatasset Hill has moved to this hill. Now, the 90-odd soldiers who were at this bridge, they actually were on both sides of the bridge, and they'd actually sent some men up onto the hill. The militia start advancing. Those soldiers on the hill come back. So the British down here they realize that they're outnumbered because by this point 400 militiamen have assembled. Down at Punkatusted Hill, the Concord militia were met by men from Acton, Bedford, and Lincoln. Then they moved there. Now, here's part of the problem, and it's been an ongoing problem. These civilians have been told that they have the same rights as those people who walk the streets of London, England, Cardiff, Wales, Edinburgh, Scotland, Dublin, Ireland. They are protected as British subjects. And they have a great love for their king. And they believe that they are loyal to their king. It's just that the Parliament has been acting in an oppressive manner. They've been tyrannical with trying to pass these various pieces of legislation to raise taxes. Their beef is with the Parliament, not with the king. So the last thing they want to do, which they can afford to do, is shoot at the king's troops, because if they do that, that's treason. Now, having said that, they're up on the hill and they start seeing smoke coming out of Concord. Now, imagine this, it's 1775, you're on that hill. What are you thinking? When you're standing on that hill and you see smoke, what are you thinking?
They're burning the city.
They're burning the town. What are we going to do about it?
We're going to save our town.
Right. Lieutenant Joseph Hosmer from Concord, in his 30s, respected by the younger guys. The older guys thought he was a bit of a hothead. One of the loyalists in Concord referred to him as the most dangerous man in Concord because of his radical politics. So Hosmer says, the Barrett turns to the colonel, he says, are you going to let him burn down the town? Now, for a lieutenant to talk to a colonel, but this is the Massachusetts militia. So what do you think they do? They have a good old traditional American caucus. Well, what are we going to do about this? They all agree. We got to do something. Nobody's arguing, oh my gosh, we can't go down there. Oh no. Isaac Davis from Acton, captain of the Acton Minutemen, says, I don't have a man who's scared to go. Barrett makes the decision. We got to do something. They're burning the town. So they march down in ranks of two, led by a drummer and a fifer. Right? The British regulars down here. British regular is a professional soldier. That's what he gets paid for. That's what he's trained to do. They thought they're dealing with a bunch of farmers. And they see them coming down. And how do I know this? Because the people who survived, they ended up testifying. Officers gave after action reports. Now, they were scared to begin with because they're an enemy. You gotta be careful about that. Quotation marks around enemy. They're in the countryside. They know that they have no friends. There are loyalists, but they know that they're outnumbered. Psychologically, when they see them coming down and they thought, oh, a bunch of farmers, we can take care of this. And they see the orderly military discipline, they start to reconsider, okay, what's going on? Some soldiers on the bridge start trying to pull up planks to physically create a gap. Major Buttrick, who is leading the men down, and in the front unit are the men from Acton. And why are they from Acton? Because this is Concord. So where's the guys from Concord? Why are they not leading it? The Acton men are put in front because they are Minutemen. A Minuteman was a member of the militia, but he's a volunteer. He's your better fighter. This is your quick reaction force. They volunteer, but they're paid. They do a lot more drilling, and they have usually all the necessary equipment, and that's what the Acton men had. They had bayonets, they had cartridge boxes, which would allow them to shoot and reload rapidly. A good shot in this time period should be able to shoot and reload 3 times in the space of a minute. That's what the trained British soldier can do. And this is the best army in the world at this time. So think about this. It takes a lot of moxie for being a citizen soldier, a militiaman, and you're going to go down and confront the best army in the world? This is the army which drove the French out of North America. This is the army which gives Britain undisputed control of everything from the east coast of the United States to the Mississippi River, including New France, which then is going to be called Canada. And you're going to mess with these guys? Well, obviously, you must be motivated, and your motivation is they've set fire to my town. That's my property, and as a British subject, I have the right. It's my duty to defend my rights. That's why they've come down off the hill. They haven't come down off that hill to start a revolution. They've come down to assert their rights as British subjects. But Barrett, before he orders them down, he says, guys, he didn't say guys, he said, men, you can't shoot first. So when we go down there, they got to shoot first. Otherwise, if we shoot first, it's treason. They're very mindful of this. Just as Parker had been mindful earlier on that morning on Lexington Green. So now, very quickly, because I'm running out of time. We're only supposed to do this for 20 minutes. All right, and you're not held captive, so if you need to go, go. I'm not going to go. I know where you live. All right, so I said out loud. All right. Buttrick sees them trying to pull the planks up, and he shouts, "Don't destroy our bridge!" And they stop. They stop doing it. They run back and they rejoin their guys. Buttrick also orders his men to quicken the pace. So now this is a causeway, right? You can't really see from here the trail, right? So it comes down and it sweeps around, but it's narrow. British make a big mistake. The captain in charge orders his men into street fighting formation. Now the bridge is not as wide as it would have been in as it is today, okay? You get maybe 4 guys shoulder to shoulder, and they line up in rows of 4, right? The front rank aims, right? They didn't extend their line beyond the mouth of the bridge. The militia will. So as they come down in ranks of 2, they now start spreading out, right? So the British are going to fire first. The first line, force 4 soldiers, shoot and deliberately miss. That's my understanding. People who witnessed the event said they shot into the river or they shot high. But the second rank behind them, they leveled they take a step out and they've leveled their muskets, and they shoot into the militia and they kill Isaac Davis and Abner Hosmer. They were dead by the time they hit the ground. Buttrick then says, "My fellow soldiers, for God's sake, fire!" That order had never been given before, and that's why this is significant. A colonial officer orders his men to fire on the king's troops, and they unleash a volley of fire, which kills 2, wounds 4 of the 8 officers, and another 5 soldiers. And then guess what the British do? They run. Now wait a second. McGarrty, you just got through telling me that this is the greatest army in the world, right? Well, yeah, on paper, right? We know the units that were here. None of those soldiers had seen combat in 12 years. And a lot of them were new recruits. And so they're still being trained. They run. And the militia, gotta go. They go after them. Chase them up the road. Go as far as the old manse. They stop. Now let me wrap this up. So the militia went as far as the old manse. They stopped. The other 120 British soldiers I told you about have got to come back the way they came. And they've got nothing to show for it. They haven't found anything. But when they get back to the bridge, 2 of their comrades are dead. And one of them looks to have been scalped.
Oh.
A little trivia for you. After the engagement, the excitement, there was a young guy who walked by and he sees one of them soldiers mortally wounded, and he finishes him off with an axe. 120 soldiers who come back and they see that, they think they're scalping. They're not taking prisoners. Those 120 will continue up the road, but they're going to have to pass the militia at the old manse. And they do so without anybody firing a shot. The British are marching back, looking at the militia are looking at them, and there's no exchange of fire. And we believe what happened was the militia remembered Barrett's orders. You only shoot if you're shot at. Those 120 are allowed then to go back into Concord. Now, the importance of the bridge. This is where the revolution begins. This is where Ralph Waldo Emerson, when Daniel Chester French's statue, the Minuteman, is erected in 1875, the last stanza of his poem is inscribed in the base of the statue. The shot that's heard around the world, he's referring to this. He's not referring to Lexington Green, and I'm not taking anything away from Lexington. I'm not, because clearly there was an engagement, but this is where the revolution begins, because a conscious decision was made to fire on the King's troops, and hence you got the start of your war for independence. And of course, I've said conclusion 3 times here already, I realize that, but I just can't leave it like this. It's not until 12:30, it's not until noon in the day that Smith decides we gotta leave. Here's the problem, they've got 20 miles. There's 700 of them, and each soldier is only armed with 30 rounds of ammunition. From Miriam's Corner at 12:30 in the afternoon to 7:30 that night, they're being harassed. They're being shot at. Because, as I said, the alarm went out. You've got militia units coming down from New Hampshire. You've got militia units coming from Salem, Dedham, Needham. It just, by the end of the day, we estimate 4,000 militia. And they wouldn't have got back if it hadn't been for a relief force. But that's another story for another day. Any questions? There's a quiz on this.
Typical teacher.